saw kind of an abbreviated fall to the dark side, and the writers and many of the fans wanted to see something that was more elaborate in detail. So we got together at Big Rock Ranch, which was one of Lucas's properties before they abandoned it and bought the Presidio, or released the Presidio. Actually, I think they still own Big Rock for some secondary purposes. Had a big authors conference with people from Lucasfilm, with writers who weren't ultimately involved with the series. Like Jim Lucena was there because he's got this encyclopedic mind of Star Wars stuff. People like Leland Chee and Pablo Hidalgo and Howard Rothman, who was one of the VPs at Lucas. And we hashed out what the overall story was going to be. I do not remember who floated Jason. I think that there were several people who liked the idea from a conceptual point of view because he had been through all these events that could really mess a human being up, especially the torture and break in Traitor, Matt Stover's novel in the New Jedi Order series. But no, I couldn't tell you. I'm not even hiding the fact for anybody's protection. I couldn't even tell you who suggested that originally. It just came up at that meeting.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question for you. Who is your favorite, Mr. Zahn? I have a question. Who is your favorite character that you've created in your books and why?
Favorite character, it would be a toss-up between Mara Jade and Grand Admiral Thrawn. Mara is good at the infighting and the small range stuff. Thrawn is good at large-scale tactics, space battles, and that sort of thing. Mara is easier to write than Thrawn because Thrawn is smarter than I am. And it makes it tricky to keep coming up with new tactics and things for you. Mara is just a calculated pain in the butt when she wants. Seriously, that's part of her job, is to stir up trouble so that she sees it. You know, you stir up the hornet's nest so you can shoot the hornets. And she has the ability and the chutzpah to do that sort of thing. So the two of those are probably my favorite. A close third would be Talon Card, simply because he's kind of where Han would have been if he hadn't dropped into that cantina for a drink and run into Obi-Wan and Luke. So. And
with Star Wars era medical technology, you could postulate a child of any two of those and have that as your next favorite character.
Question for both of you guys. When coming up with like a new Star Wars story, do you guys come up with the story yourselves, or like you have like a set guidelines that you guys have to follow and like just fill in like the blank spots?
There's a difference between when we're doing our own Star Wars stuff and when we're doing a group thing like you have done. So for me, I've never done one of the overall story arc type of thing. So it's a matter of I present an outline of what I want to do, and Del Rey, now Bantam originally, but Del Rey and Lucasfilm will look it over and tell me what they like, what they don't like, what I need to persuade me that this makes sense. We don't like this for this reason, but I can argue the point if I feel it's necessary. So I basically start with something and then they tell me whether or not I can do it. With your
well, I've played both sides of that fence. Right. Some of the work I've done has been with protracted series that involved other writers, and the original premise for the series was floated either by Lucas or Del Rey or both, and that follows the pattern that I was describing to you earlier. Everybody getting together, hammering out an overall series arc, then slicing it into pieces and apportioning those among writers. There are greater and lesser amounts of freedom accorded you when you do that. With my New Jedi Order novels, basically the description that I was given of what I was supposed to do at my point in the series, and I didn't even attend the New Jedi Order authors meetings because I came in so late, was had to do with the Rebel Alliance or the New Republic beginning to turn the tide against the Yuuzhan Vong invasion. It was almost that little detail, like 2 sentences worth of information I was given, and so I got to come up with a notion of having the world of Borleas be kind of a paradigm for the American holdout at Bastogne, which was really the inspiration for those 2 novels. Almost all the details of those two novels originated with me. With the Legacy of the Force and Fate of the Jedi series, more of it came down from the authors' meetings and from Del Rey and from Lucasfilm. Sometimes from the needs of the other writers in the series, who say, "Oh, I'm setting this up. Can you presage it for us? Can you foreshadow it for us?" And I'd be putting in subplots and details, taking handoff subplots and details from previous novels, and then setting up more detail. So there is more stricture there. So really, it goes both ways. Something like Starfighters of Adumar, I had almost total creative freedom, and that was a big thrill.
And with the Race Squadron, you basically had free.
Yeah.
All of those books. You
Yeah,
basically
the four Race Squad novels, including Starfighters, was well, why don't you continue what Mike started here and do whatever you want to? And I had no idea what the heck to do. I called Mike in a panic and said, "What should I do?" He said, "Well, Warlord Zinj needs killing."
That sounds like Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Go knock yourself out, probably. Yeah.
I'm actually really curious, more for you, Zahn. Really curious how you come up with A, your tech, and B, your character.
I generally start with plot. A lot of people start with characters or some scene or something. I generally start with what is the story going to be, and the characters start out as essentially cardboard cutout placeholders. Okay, we need a villain here. Let's call him Grand Admiral Thrawn. We need somebody as an Imperial agent to link the rescue of Han with the whole rebellion main storyline of the movies. Let's call her Mara Jade. And as I start fleshing out the storyline and getting the details, the characters flesh out as well. But it's mostly a matter of the characters are what I need to tell my story. I don't need a surgeon in my book, so there is none. I need a really good computer slicer of some sort. Let's call him Gent and let him become a cult favorite of some sort, which really surprised me, but I don't know why it should have. The tech, basically you run from what Lucas has given, and as Star Wars, as the expanded universe has expanded, we've gotten a lot more tech and a lot more documentation, which has made it a lot easier to do.
But if you're a science fiction writer, you cannot help but extrapolate on what is already in place.
Right. You extrapolate, you interpolate, you try to... The trick with any universe like that, being the science fiction writers that we are, is not to put in something that will throw a monkey wrench elsewhere. For example, I had probably a 2-hour discussion once with a couple of the West End Games guys back during the Thrawn trilogy when they were still doing the role-playing game, trying to figure out how hyperdrive worked. And one suggestion was you get yourself into hyperspace and then you have to decelerate out. And the problem with that is if you have to decelerate as opposed to it happening automatically, you have a railgun, you have a mass driver. You don't need a Death Star, you can just send an asteroid into hyperspace, not decelerate it, and have it run into Alderaan at 0.9 C or whatever it comes out at, and you've got your weapon of choice, and it's free. The fact that it never happened in the movies means it can't happen, therefore that's not how hyperdrive works. So you have to do all of these, figure out what was seen in the movies, what was not seen in the movies, the books, the TV shows, etc. And that, with the stuff that we've been given from Lucasfilm, we can come up with pretty much most of the tech we need. That's at least how I do it. Do you have a different approach?
Not generally. I mean, the ideas will spark from any new invention that comes along in the expanded universe. I'm a gamer as well, so just about any idea that floats by in front of me, I try to figure out some new way to exploit it. Catastrophically if possible.
Yes.
Because if you can exploit it catastrophically, there's a danger to the universe and to the series that you have to somehow put a lid on. But there is a portion of the writer's mind, actually several portions that do different things all the time, even when you sleep. And one of them is figuring out exploits for facts established by other people who should have known better.
Example.
I'm drawing a blank at the moment.
Okay, well, let me just throw an example which I don't think works, and I preface this with I've not actually read the book, so I may be talking entirely through my hat, but what I understand is that in one of the recent series, it may have been Legacy of the Force, there's some technique called time walking or something.
Flow walking.
Flow walking.
That is a perfect example.
Now
yes.
that is where you can send information back in time or something. What exactly is that?
Okay.
If you know specifically.
If anybody have a hammer with which I can hit my head for a while? Flow walking, when it was first presented, looked like a type of time travel in which mental projection could be sent back and forward through time for gleaning of information and communication of information. Later, as the series advanced and progressed, and the possibilities of the use of this were explored, it was constrained more, and it became something that occurred chiefly in the mind and the experience of the Jedi who was performing the flow walk. So it became really impossible to affect things back in time or forward in time. It did become possible to experience them and glean from them, but not to affect them. So that is an example of a technique that might have been intended for one thing and was later reined in to a considerable extent.
But you see the problem with that, if the Emperor can send message back in time, he cannot be defeated by Vader.
Right.
We have the same problem with the time turners of Harry Potter. I winced when I first saw that. No, don't bring in time travel. Please don't bring in time travel. They brought in time travel. Because if something is possible, it will be done.
Do you see the irony of two writers who don't like time travel, who both done Terminator books?
Mine had no time travel.
Neither did mine.
Well, there we go. But time travel by its very nature is almost impossible not to screw up because causality is out the window. But you see the problem with this. Think of something that it's a cool idea, the flow walking. Unfortunately, now we have it retroactively destroys some of the movie stuff, including the climax of the whole 6-movie series. Because if somebody else can do it, Palpatine would have learned how to do it. And so that's the sort of thing you have to watch out. Does your technology now eliminate something? For example, if you had, for example, in the prequel movies, you had some kind of a shield that blocked blaster bolts, then of course, the first stormtrooper into Princess Leia's ship ought to have been carrying one of those things. So obviously you don't want to do something like that. Which is a problem with prequels because you have to regress your technology, and it's, as your special effects become better and cheaper, it's really hard to resist the temptation not to regress it. That may be more answer than you had questioned, but that's what you get with us.
Sometimes you're just going to suffer.
Yeah.
Kind of tying back into the question about creating characters in tech. How did you come about creating the character of Admiral Thrawn? I guess more of like, creating a scenario where there's a puzzle that he has to solve, and then how does he solve it, and how do you make it so that it's not just convenient that he solved it?
That's always the trick, and there will some people who will always say, well, you set it up too conveniently. I try to set up a situation and then come up, without thinking of how I'm going to solve it, and then come up with the solution.
I do the same thing.
Yeah, it's basically you're playing both sides of the chessboard. And you're trying to win with both sides, even knowing in the back of your mind which side has to win this particular encounter. The current book I'm working on, or I'm